Ladies and gentlemen, as I invite our next panelists on stage, can we go ahead and have a round of applause for Captain Mohan Naik, who is also the moderator for this session. He's the Managing Director at Dynacom Tankers Management Private Limited. I would also like to call upon Captain Girish Fadnis, the COO of MASA. Please come up on stage, sir. Captain Aniket Pradhan, Fleet Personnel Director, MSC Crewing Services Private Limited. Captain Rohan Hiranchal, the Director, Crew Service Center, Bernard Schulte, Ship Management, India. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for our panelists. Also, another person on the panelist, we have Captain Pavan Kumar Singh, General Manager at Scorpio Marine Management Private Limited. Captain Sujit Shuri, Head Fleet Personnel Department at the Great Indian Eastern Shipping Company Limited. Can we have a round of applause for all our panelists here on stage? I just received word that Captain Sujit Shuri is not here, of course, but I would also like, yes, thank you so much for that. So it's over to Captain Mohan Naik, who is a moderator for the session. Can we have microphones, please, on stage?
Kindly take your seats.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, everyone, and good afternoon again. It's been nice to see you, everyone, from yesterday. It's such great sessions we've been having, and I hope this session also brings out clarity in a very difficult subject. Trust as a future skill, building high-performance ship-shore teams beyond blame culture. Now, this particular topic is very apt in today's day and age. I'd like to thank FSM, TNC, Captain Shaukat for giving us this opportunity to discuss this subject. I hope we will be able to do justice to this particular subject today afternoon. So firstly, I would like to ask my colleague, Captain Girish Fadnis, because we'll start with a common question to all. All of you are sitting in very high positions of responsibility in companies. Some of you are in crewing, some of you are in recruiting, some of you are also in operations. So talking about the first subject, that is trust. Do you have any experience, personal experience, as a own experience as a seafarer or as a show-based employer of any particular example or a situation where trust played an important part, and how did you resolve the situation? Your thoughts on it, Captain Girish.
Thanks. Thank you very much, Captain Naik. Trust. Trust is a two-way street. When you ask me for my experience, okay, we have to go a bit back into time. When things were not as easy communications as it is today. In today's world, we have a whole lot of communication facilities. So when I can recall a trust factor, or even if I can generalize it, in those days, the office superintendents or the management team used to rely on the feedback given by the vessel, especially the master, and trust played a very important factor then. It was not managed as it is today from shore. We could practically say a lot of operations is done right from the shore, execution is done on the ship side. So whatever feedback we gave from the vessel, however important it be, there was a huge trust factor then, and the execution was carried out to the satisfaction of the superintendents or the company. Hence, it played a very important role then. It is today also. It is. But when you talk about an experience, I would say, we've had an issue, Great Lakes. We had to do some major repairs. I will not get into the details in the company. But a lot was left then onto myself, who was the master, and the chief engineer to complete the job without letting the authorities know about it. We are talking about delays. Right or wrong, we are not getting into it because we are talking only about trust and how the work was executed. So that, I feel, is important, was then. And today, of course, as we go ahead, we'll take it up in a different form. Thanks.
Thanks, Girish. The same question applies to you, Aniket. Did any kind of experience you had, shore-based, ship-based, where trust played an important part, and how did you cope with the situation?
Thank you, sir. Basically, we are all into crowing. So, the trust what we have is of our seafarers when we talk about the crewing. Okay. One of the latest experience what we had with regards to the trust, I would like to share. One of our ship, in the evening, 8 o'clock, the master calls up and informs that, I have a deck cadet on board, a lady deck cadet on board, and the father is critical. Vessel was en route from West Africa to Singapore. And the next thing what he said was, I have stopped the ship. We are off Cape Town. I have stopped the ship. I have sent a message to everyone, and I am waiting for the answer. The next 2 or 3 hours went into finding out, exactly what is the situation at home, whether the father is critical, non-critical, whether we can bring the ship inside the Cape Town or not. And finally, after 2 or 3 hours, we came to know that we cannot bring the ship in the Cape Town, and because of the port regulations, where we required 24 hours notification to be given for ISPS. So our team in Geneva decided, okay, we will divert the ship in Durban, which is after about 18 to 20 hours of passage. In the meantime, unfortunately, the girl's father passed away in the night, and morning we got a call from the family that he's passed away, he's no more. But still, we decided, no, we will divert the ship in Cape Durban, and we will disembark her. If the regulation does not allow us, then we will divert it to Port Louis and we will disembark her. She was just 2 months on board, Finally, in the afternoon, I received a call from the mother of the cadet informing that, please don't disembark my child. This is the career which is, she has started it. If she disembarks, it will be a break in career. I want her to continue. We tried to pacify the family that, no, let her come for the final rites, but she said no. And then we went back to the girl. She said, yes, I want to continue on board. So here is a simple example of trust. The trust what the master had on the company, that stopping the ship in the middle of the ocean, without having a decision, there will be no blame on the master that why did you stop without permission. So he stopped there, the ship was delayed for about 4 hours or 6 hours till the decision was done. The trust the family has on the company, that yes, the company has done all their due diligence and the company did their best to disembark my child, but in the better interest of my child, let her continue on board. So that kind of trust, this is the latest, scenario we had about a couple of months back.
That reminds me, Aniket, thanks for this unique experience, that when we are training the cadet or the trainee for the arduous sea life, we should also train the parents. Somebody had mentioned it earlier. The training of the parents is also important. That look, you are sending somebody on the ship, which is a hazardous environment, and it's very difficult to come home even if there is an emergency in the family. So I believe the parents must have got, of course the father is no more, but the mother must have got some training about this.
Yes, yes.
Thank you. The same question to Rohan. Rohan, we would like to hear your views on this, where trust played an important part, and you yourself had to solve or see how you resolved that problem.
Thank you, sir. But before I get into the examples, maybe for the sake of all of us here, just to make sense of what we are speaking, because trust has various facets, and the context in what we are speaking is work-related, right? So I was asking myself, what's the example of trust? But before that, what does trust mean? So trust for me is having confidence in that other person or the organization or the system, that it will work well even when no one is watching it. So if that is what trust is, my second question was, in the work sphere that we are talking of, where trust is the underlying essence of everything that we do, and that's why it's an important thing that we are speaking about. My question is, what are the factors that are important where a person can trust someone? So in the work sphere, again, that would be competency. I should have the confidence that that person knows what he's doing. Or if I'm a seafarer, I should have the confidence that the organization is a standard organization and the processes are fine. So that's the competency part. Second, I would say, is consistency. Doing what is right, doing the same thing consistently. If a person keeps changing his stance, if an organization just looks after a seafarer just for the hiring part, and then safety is no longer a priority after he's hired, then there's no consistency. So that's the second factor that is important in trust. The third one I would say is integrity. Integrity or the intent. Whenever someone is doing something, what is the intent behind it? How honestly is that person or that organization doing it? So these are the three factors. Coming to the example, and then I'll kind of align with these three factors to make sense of it. So in recruitment, because that's a major chunk of what my role is all about. So in my team, once the dual fuel engines came, what we did is had a training session with all the recruiters, telling them what dual fuel engines are, what IGF is, the operational aspects of it, the certification aspects of it, because even a bulk carrier can have a dual fuel engine, which the recruiters at their level may not understand. So when they are recruiting someone, chief engineer, for example, on a dual fuel bulk carrier or a dual fuel LNG vessel, they should be very clear when I say it's a LNG fueled bulk carrier. It's not a LNG vessel, it's a LNG powered engine, but it's a bulk carrier. Once these people understood the technical aspects of it and the certificate aspects of it, which is, as we all know, a little complex. Methanol has different certification aspects. IGF has different, ethane, LNG has a different thing. So with all this in mind, now when they call up the seafarer, they are transparent. They are able to understand what the seafarer is asking them, able to answer properly. So competency is covered. They're consistent. The recruiter, when he hands over to the operations team, both the teams know exactly what has been promised because technically they are aware of what the requirement is. And intention. The intention, what is the intention? Intention is to hire that person, and these are the requirements. So that part is also covered. I am not promising a seafarer that you're going on a bulk carrier without telling him that it's a dual fuel engine, for example, for the sake of the discussion. So if all of these are taken care of, I think that develops the trust, both sides. So if the seafarer is trusting the organization because these people know what they are speaking and they're consistent to an extent, and the staff also trust the seafarer because then they are able to ask the right questions before hiring him. Thanks.
Thank you, Rohan, for this very graphic explanation of the whole scenario of trust right from the recruitment stage. That you explain to the candidate what exactly is he going in for and see that he is properly trained for it. Thank you. Pawan, the same question comes to you. Any example where trust played an important part and you resolved the issue?
Good afternoon, everyone. Am I audible in the end? Oh, very. Thank you. Thank you for the mic check. Firstly, thank you, Shaukat and the TNC team to invite us for the event. It is going great. I'm attending it for the first time, but the feeling is great. Every session is bringing in new things. And what were we discussing before we came in for the panel discussion about the flow? And the one thing that we agreed is that the topic is light and also at the same time heavy. and how the discussion will go, we don't know. We asked and that is the only one question that we agreed upon, is that to set the context and the tone for the discussion, we'll start with our own experiences of trust, how it has played an important role. And, talking about our own experience, I think we have almost covered all the three important facets of the discussion: the trust, the relationship, and the culture. I'm saying it's light because these three things are used very loosely. We heard each other talking about trust, and we have our own definition of trust. For me, the foundation of trust is intent. And through the 2 days, we heard a lot of people talking about intent for various things. For me, intent is critical. If we do not trust the intent of the other person, we cannot trust the person. We may continue to use this word as a fancy word to say we should and we trust each other, but we will never trust each other. And when this question was put up to us, the immediate reaction during the discussion was, we have so many examples to share that it's a killer for us to start with. The second feeling, at least for me, was that we have so much to share. What is that one example that we pick up and that connects with the audience? And I especially thought something for the youngsters on that front. So what I'm going to share, my personal example, is an example for the trust that we have with the organization that we work with. I'm working for Scorpio for over 12 years, and I've moved several roles. Heading the crewing team is my fourth role in the company. Every movement before was very related to what we do while sailing, even ashore. As superintendent, then in the quality assurance team, and then the technical. When the option of moving to crewing was given, I was worried, because I know that we are super confident to say that we can do anything as seafarers, putting so much time and experience out at sea. But we know that we neither have the knowledge nor we have the experience to run a crewing setup where you have to hold thousands of seafarers. And those seafarers are not in front of you all the time. You have to have the pulse of them without seeing them day in, day out. So we are working out of our skills, our gut, and all that stuff. So I got worried, and in that room I had only the MD and the fleet director, and they gave this option to me, and I only asked for two things. One was a question as to why I am asked to move, to understand that what was the thought behind putting me there. And the second was just a request that if I don't settle down, please allow me to come back to the technical. And it's been more than 2 years in crewing, new role, new challenges, and I have been able to grow immensely individually and also work on the team front, both shore and the seafaring side. I'm quite glad. So the reason I wanted to share this personal example for the youngsters, especially because loyalty pays off. Trust in the organization pays off. I know that we are super adaptive. We want to, when we go back to, when we are going to sailing, we may get a temptation to jump from companies to companies for various reasons. But sticking to an organization always pays off. Thank you.
Thank you, Pawan, for explaining your role in the company and how you managed to trust the company right from the beginning. So this is a lesson for all the cadets here. People have recruited you, companies have recruited you, they have their faith in you. So stick by the company which you have been selected. Okay? Yeah. So I think Captain Girish needs to add something to what he explained before.
Thank you very much, Captain Naik. I was having a word with Mr. Manish Pradhan this morning. So, with your permission, trust is built over time. It is no point saying that you need to trust us or we will trust you. It is built over time. Especially when we have so many cadets here who are going to start their careers out at sea. It is how we treat them matters for them to trust us with problems that they face. A very small thing which he mentioned is they have an app which every week, every trainee has to report. I'm sure other companies must be having, but what I heard, so I'm telling, is they have to report back as to their well-being. And they graded from 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 5 being the best. And people from the right department connect with those juniors. I feel this is so important, even for the juniors and the cadets to hear that the company cares, the company responds, and as they grow up the rank, that is where the trust building comes up. I can tell the company whatever I feel is going wrong without the fear of any adverse effect on me. So that trust building starts from the base. Thank you. Just a point which I wanted to make.
Thanks, Girish. I think that's the second subject now we are going to talk about. That is, we are going to amalgamate the two. You see, about 10, 12 years back, when I used to actively do oil major inspections and on behalf of the owner, of course, and also attend TMSA audits, one thing kept cropping up, that was this no blame culture, no blame culture. I think it was introduced by Shell or BP, one of the two companies. And then it spread to the tanker industry. Now this no blame culture has now become just blame culture. And now Shaukat has coined another word, beyond blame culture. Okay? So it's evolving. This culture concept is also evolving. So my next question is to Captain Girish. That is, why is trust and beyond blame culture between shore and ship so critical in shipping?
See, like we were saying, earlier we used to have a blame culture, and the general, I'm not generalizing, but generally we used to push the blame onto the vessel. And as things have changed, like what the topic is all about, just blame culture, it's no point in blaming. We have to get to the root cause of why it has happened. And we have to let the crew feel comfortable to respond to the office or to the management with the problems that they are facing. So this just blame culture, the change that we are seeing, what is happening now, especially when we have multinational crews on board, the complete dynamics of a vessel is changing. We have more sophisticated equipment. And there is no point in just having to blame the people on board. We have to let them speak out and respond than to hide things. Because hiding any issue on board, which was earlier the case, I can't say earlier the case, we could never find out the root cause. We'll never be able to get into the root cause of the issue that is actually taking place. So the transparency between both ends has to be so open, so has to be a level of confidence, both on the ship side and the staff, to be able to respond so that there could be a more openness and solution to the matters. Thank you.
Thanks, Girish. Next question is to Captain Aniket. It's two questions in one. First part is, how can one build a resilient ship-shore relationship based on trust? And also, how does a company, may not be your own company, maybe some other company, ideally implement this trust and just culture in the SMS?
To add where Captain Girish started with, when we talk about resilience, resilience is basically, whenever there is a problem, unexpected problem, both the ship and the shore team stands together to resolve the problem. We need to look at the aspect that instead of who made the mistake, what made a judgment which caused the problem. So that's how the culture will start. We are all today, whenever any issues happen on board, the first thing to blame is on the seafarer. Okay, the ship staff did not follow the routine, the ship staff did not do the maintenance. But what is the superintendent sitting in the office doing? He has got all the tools to monitor the systems. So why he has not done his job? So that kind of trust we need to bring in, that kind of, the culture we need to set in. If we have to grow the resilience, we need to, work together, the shore team as well as the ship staff. And the other thing is, how we have implemented this in our SMS, no blame culture, is basically we have a system wherein we have a 360-degree appraisal reporting system, wherein you prepare, normally the appraisal reports are prepared for the ship staff, but here the ship staff also prepares the appraisals for his superintendents. How well supportive he was during his tenure on board, how well cooperative, whether there was any blame culture on board, if any issues arises, whether the blame was put on the ship or was support given to him. So that has helped a lot, in reducing the blame culture on board the vessel.
Thanks, Aniket. Very aptly put about how your company can implement this in the SMS. My next question is to Rohan. This is a very important question. It is, how does one balance the no blame or whatever you call it now, beyond blame culture, and discipline on board? Because it is said that if a seafarer is making some mistakes, you should not blame him. But does it mean that the seafarer should take any kind of negligent decision also? I would like you to highlight on this discipline and so-called no blame culture.
That's true. Let me answer the question first in one word. So there's something called the just culture, which has been introduced. So I'll talk about it, but that's the answer. So I'll talk what was there in the past, present, and what would probably help in the future to take care of the discipline and the accountability part when no blame comes in. So in the past days, and for the cadets, I think this is important, there was nothing, the Pirates of the Caribbean days where anything was okay, right? You could do whatever you want. Once you're out at sea, no one to ask. Next came the blame culture, I suppose, where you do a mistake, you pay the penalty. You are asked to get off the ship, no questions asked, you made a mistake, just get out. That didn't work, and I'll give you an example to tell you why. So suppose there's a cadet who's fresh on a ship, who's just joined the ship or has been on board for some time, and he is not supposed to enter a space for some reason. But he enters that space out of curiosity or something. He happens to open a valve. Okay, now when he opens that valve, he or she opens that valve, what happens? A valve which has never been opened for many years, we all know what happens. Then once you shut it, he realizes that there's oil or gas coming out. So then he shuts the valve. But there are drops that are falling, right? It continues to drip because the valve cannot be shut completely. Now I'm in a space where I'm not supposed to be, and I've done something which I'm not supposed to do. What do I do in such a situation? I go up, nobody's watched me, there's no cameras around. What do? Do I keep quiet? Maybe. But then what's the consequence of this? The drops are still falling. So that enclosed space, or whichever space that is which he's not supposed to enter, is affected. So let's go back to the blame, no blame, and the just culture. Now, in a blame culture, what would have happened? There's this fear. There's this fear in the cadet or anyone for that matter that if I report this, good thing is that will be, they'll send down a pumpman or a fitter or bosun and someone senior will come and handle that valve. So there's no more leakage. But then I'll be reprimanded. I may be sent home because I've done something I'm not supposed to do. That was the blame culture. So I think industry realized that this is not helping because, okay, you're blaming someone, but the root cause and the preventive measure is not taken care of. So then came in the no blame culture. Now, no blame culture, what happens? The same scene, you come up because there's no fear. Because, okay, at the most they'll ask you a few questions, but that's all. Okay, I have no fear. I've done something which I'm not supposed to do, sir. But there's a issue out there, so please send someone to rectify it. Very good. Took care of the factor of, ensuring things are reported with the no blame culture. But there's a problem here because subconsciously everyone gets into that zone that, or consciously for those naughty ones, that no matter what I do, I'm safe, right? It's like I see a no entry and on the roads that we always do, if there's no camera, no policeman, we break the rules. So discipline is affected. That's where discipline comes in. And that's where this just culture comes in. Now, same scene, what happens in a just culture? Just culture is where the cadet comes up, he reports, right? Without fear, there's no fear in the just culture, right? Like in the no blame, but there is accountability. Questions will be asked, things will be investigated. Now there may be 2-3 factors here. If this is the first time that person has done this, then I suppose he or she deserves that benefit of doubt. He'll be briefed, explained, taught what not to do, what to do, right? That's one. If this thing has been repeated in the past and the same thing is being done again, then I think that person deserves a warning. So that is the second thing. Now, if the same person is repeating again and again, then the third step comes in, which would have come much earlier in the blame or the no blame culture. So that's what just culture brings in, where it removes the fear factor. So people speak up, report honestly, and make sure things are taken care of. But at the same time, ensures accountability is maintained. So that's the difference.
Thanks, Rohan. I think it's something called behavioral-based safety also. Yes, a big applause for him because he has really dissected the whole subject. So in this BBS, something like that similar is there. Somebody making a mistake, other person who is seeing it should without fear report that. Coming to Captain Pawan now. You have played many roles in your company. And one of the roles, I don't know if you have played, is that of DPA. DPA also you have been designated person assured.
Assurance, but not.
Okay. So what Aniket said about appraisals and things like that, seafarers tell me, not necessarily, I'm not going to name any company, that the appraisal which they get on board before they sign off is all 5 out of 5, 4 out of 5, something like that. But actually later on it is watered down on the telephone. Okay. So that means that there is still some blame culture existing in many organizations. How can shipping companies practically move beyond it? First part. Second part, what role does the designated person ashore, DPA, play in this whole matter?
Interesting question. But before I go there, I was hearing the panelists speak about, my fellow panelists speak about culture. And again, different versions. And if, let's say, I have to put a very simple one-line definition to culture, it is what we tolerate. It is the output of what we tolerate. It's simple as that. Now, how do we build culture in an organization? it is only possible if we speak the same language. Otherwise, we will talk about it, but we will not be able to demonstrate in the way we want to demonstrate. We talk a lot about uniformity. So in our organization, we put it very simple. The 8 behaviors, we ran a program and we said that we talk the same language about those 8 behaviors. 4 of them were foundational, which is like super critical. You don't have it, you can't build it. Like trust, care, open, learn. These are foundational behaviors. And then the other 4 were more related to growth, talking about speak up, feedback, teamwork, and dilemma handling. Now coming to the question of what we can do ashore is, and Rohan also spoke about psychological safety with the accountability. It's, we don't want to blame, but at the same time, we provide the psychological safety from the organization, but we also hold people accountable for their actions. Otherwise, we will, after a couple of years, we will be wondering that what have we done? Like, we went from one extreme of blaming people to get the immediate satisfaction with us to say that something went wrong, and we put it on someone, and we got the immediate relief, to moving on to a situation where we are saying that error is normal and we accept it. So that is one. And the question about how DPA or I would put it more broadly to say that how the organizations can support is through trusting the intent, what I mentioned in the beginning. I'm just putting it brief because we have to be also mindful of the time. The second point that you mentioned about appraisal. We moved away from appraisal. We call it performance development plan because appraisals are linked to mainly 2 things. Output, what is the output? Either the person is promoted, or in extreme cases, you have to take the hard call of marking someone not to be recruited, NTBR. And we moved away to say that call it performance development plan and keep it more holistic, where you talk about behaviors, competencies, but you don't give that option of selecting whether promotion allowed or NTBR marked. Leave it for the assessor who is sitting centrally ashore to assess the output of the conversations that have happened. Appraisals cannot be done at the end of the contract completion. We need to do expectation setting in the beginning, then intermediate feedback reviews, and then eventually the closeout before the contract completion. So we're doing it in stages. I hope I have.
Yes, answered it quite well. You are talking about now continuous appraisal. You're not calling it as appraisal, but it is a continuous career development plan.
It's a development plan because then there is some positivity to it. The people don't get the feeling of being reprimanded that, if there is something negative that is put in the appraisal, then my career, my future in the organization is jeopardized.
Girish wants to add something.
Just to put it beyond blame culture in a simple line, the focus changes from, instead of who caused it, what caused for the situation to happen. Let's put it in the short line.
Thanks, Girish. Any active seafarer in the audience or who has just taken up a shore job? Anybody here? Active seafarer or somebody who has taken up a shore assignment in the audience? Anybody there? In the morning, there was one gentleman. I just wanted to hear whether they had any such experience, about good or bad maybe. If that is, nobody is there, then I think we'll...
Can you
Yes,
hear me?
please go
Sir.
ahead. What's your
Yeah.
name, sir?
Desmond.
Captain Pradeep Korea? Is that you?
No. Yeah, Desmond.
One sec, there is somebody
Sir.
on the active seafarer, somebody, I'll take.
Yeah.
Somewhere in the
my
back
name-
benches.
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead, please.
Yeah.
Somebody can hand over the mic to them?
Yeah. Good afternoon. My name is Desmond Fernandez. So, one question I was like wanted to put to the panel, especially being in the crewing side and all. Now, early 2000s, when I started my career, there was like kind of a gentleman's agreement. So, me as a seafarer, I walk into office and I discuss with the crewing department. Say, I see 2 years or 3 years down the line what I want to be and how to get there. And we have a conversation understanding what all things to achieve. Right? Now we have ISM code came much later, and we have a lot of things, literature which is there in the SMS, which has been already discussed about all these reviews and all those things, right? But honestly, as a seafarer, last few years, what I find is there is a disconnect. Although there is on paper a lot of things, but when it comes to
Can you
action,
please hold the mic more towards
Yeah.
yourself?
so in the action part, what happens is the crewing basically will listen. Okay, what you want as a seafarer? They'll say yes, yes, yes. And now because this matrix things have come, so 36 months between the ranks and all that, we find that they say yes, we agree to a plan, but it is not honored. You know, this has been my personal experience, and with my interactions with other colleagues also is the same. So as an industry, there is a lot of deviation. Before, when there was nothing on the paper, there was this gentleman agreement where we agree, we meet those tasks. Now, industry-wise, that you don't find, although there are a lot of things in the SMS. Thanks.
So what you're trying to say is this paperwork covers up a lot of...
There is a paperwork, but then see,
it
there is something
doesn't
like
show the
what
correct
I will
picture.
do, and there are actions, right? So,
Anybody from the
seafarer-
panel would like to take this? Okay. It's basically, we were not able to hear you properly.
Okay,
We
just a
can-
short so that. Okay, what I am trying to tell you is before there was like a gentleman agreement.
Which
Where-
agreement?
A gentleman agreement. You
agreement,
just
okay.
walk in and you discuss your career progression, right? And you honor all those parts, right? Your promotions or whatever. I need little bit this and that, whatever. But now what I find is people agree to it, the crewing department, but when it comes to honoring part of it, that doesn't happen. Promotions or whatever, you know.
One of the panelists can take up. After that, we'll open the audience for the questions and answers.
That's the question is very apt that you promise something to a seafarer before he goes on board, and then you break the promise. That's where the trust plays a very important part. I mean to say, all standard companies today have got their policies laid down, whether it's regarding your promotion, whether it is regarding your upgradations. And those policies must be checked before you find an employment in any company.
Thanks, Aniket. I think this answers the question. It's a very open-ended question. All organizations are not same, so we have to take it case-to-case basis.
Yeah, that's correct. I would say, but then see, if policies are there, it has been discussed with the
Yes.
seafarers. So there has been an agreement. So it's not like you have not understood the policies. And you are meeting all the criterias. But there is a disconnect. That's what I'm trying to say. And this has come in the last 5-6 years, what I've seen. Now, and I believe if you start speaking with the seafarers in a honest way to get them to trust, then if they open up, this is what the trend is. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll just say one thing. If that is what is happening in your organization, please leave it as soon as possible.
Okay, I open the floor
Because
for questions and
there is a
answers.
clear trust deficit, and if we are not living up to our promises, even if it is verbal, then we are not in a good place.
I ditto that. We have 3 hands raised. First one was from Pradeep Korea, then one Dr. Captain Sartaj Gill, and third one from Arvind Shankar. So Pradeep Korea
See,
doesn't seem to be there.
I've been listening to all this talk which is happening, but people who actually run the business, there are two ways to do it. The ship owner who runs about 50, 100 ships, knows every ship of his. He's not bothered about your appraisal system, HR is doing all the fancy things, all that. But if a ship stops and there's a loss of downtime and earning $100,000, he doesn't care who is master there for 50 years, he wants his head. Remember that all ship owners who have worked at ship owning company will know that. In the ship management company, they have a way of managing it. Usko nikal do udhar se, dusra fleet mein dalo. That's the way it is operating, and it's a fact of operation which is happening. Because no ship owner is going to tolerate his loss. That be very clear. Of all who understand the ship owning business. And they know the downtime is caused because of somebody's error who has really done some miscalculation or whichever which has happened, and he wants his head. So I think all this is happening. We listen, appraisals happen, this is happening. But the bottom line is the owner cannot lose his money. Clear? I think everybody here understands what I'm saying.
That's a separate topic for debate. Ship management versus ship owning. Please.
Ship manager versus ship owner.
Next question, sir, Sartaj Sahab.
Yeah. Good points made by Captain Pradeep Korea. My question is more about hierarchy. Do you think there is a difference in the level of trust based on hierarchy? So what I mean by that is that a new cadet steps foot on board. Do you think they will have more trust on the senior officer versus the senior officer lacking the trust on them to be able to do the job? Similarly, master versus superintendent. Is the superintendent in your organizations considered higher up in the hierarchy than the master? And if so, how do you balance the level of trust?
See, it's a very catch-22 question that you asked. When a cadet or a junior comes on board, he looks up to his seniors for his safety, for his knowledge, for his time on board. So the level of trust there is very high because he knows he has to live with that particular seniors, whether it's engine, deck, whichever department, and he has that time span. What you're asking, the next question is, between the senior management and the office, it's an open-ended question where it all depends upon, like somebody did ask, whether you're working for an ownership company or a management company. If you're working for a management company, the trust level is at that level. It's not there to a very great extent because there are lots of things, like Pradeep Korea said, depends upon the financials and the profitability of a vessel. If it's an ownership company, they take different responsibility for their people. So there is a difference of trust level between juniors and the seniors on board and the seniors and the management.
Thanks, Girish. We have one last question.
Yeah,
We are run short of time.
I'll make it really quick.
Yes.
So I'm also part of one of the shipping companies, right? While we try to to eradicate the no blame culture, we also have a massive challenge that this is at the foundation level, at the grassroots level, at MTIs. The feedback which is given to students is not, for example, strength-based. There's a concept called strength-based feedback. We always focus on a single weakness. The person is not proactive, for example, in studying. We are focusing on banja proactive, become proactive. Nobody is focusing on the student's strength. Maybe they are technically sound. How do I pair that cadet with somebody else who can, who's proactive in their learning? So this is something which we could explore as shipping companies. And I don't know if any of you have actually explored strength-based feedback aside from the 360-degree feedback which we are doing. And this is something which I think we need to, formulate into the cadetship. This is a systematic change because from school to we are having a very clear blame culture. When that is something which is far beyond. So is there any of the organizations which you are in which is focusing on strength-based feedback rather than focusing on the negatives?
Yeah, I'll answer that because we have a similar kind of feedback system or an open appraisal reporting system. wherein the both appraisee and appraisal have to sit down and he has to talk to him, explain to him about his positives and negatives. So only after both of them concur, it has been signed and sent. So we do have those kind of, culture in our organization, the processes.
Thank you, my co-panelists. Thank you very much for all the questions posed by the audience. There's a cadet. Yes, madam. Always time for you. Yes.
Very good afternoon, everybody. I am Cadet Ikra Fatima from Ganpati University. I have a question to you, Captain Rohan sir, that you talked about a cadet being curious. Out of his curiosity, he went and opened a valve. So when he opened it, he was given a benefit of doubt. After that, he was given a warning. And then you said that he is being blamed, which should have been done beforehand. The blame should have been done before. So what is the threshold limit to that blame thing out there so that the forgiving system is not being affected by the blame culture and there is trust being maintained, even at the junior level and at the senior level?
Okay, it's quite simple. Complex, but I'll make it simple.
Yeah.
Now you're crossing the road. Okay, you don't know it's a no entry or it's a one way. Okay, let's take the one way example. I don't know it's a one way. I enter. Is that totally my fault? Okay, I should have seen, I should have known. I didn't know. Right? So I should be given the benefit of doubt. I do that the second time because I've forgotten, maybe. I should be warned. If I do that the third time, then obviously you can't keep, allowing that person to keep doing that same thing. So there's no threshold. Each, depending on the seriousness of the matter, the threshold can change.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Captain Rohan. I think with that, we are coming to the end of the
That's
time.
correct.
So we should stress again on open communication, reporting honestly, so that the team improves, so that the system improves. That thing should be the focus. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And a very big round of applause to our panelists. Please remain on stage. I would like to call upon Captain Savio Ramos, the General Secretary, Maritime Union of India, to please join us on stage to felicitate our panelists. Also call upon Ekha Shukla from Maersk. Please join us on stage to felicitate our panelists. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for all our panelists for this very encouraging session. While we have the group photograph going on, I would like to give you an important message. Our special guest, Captain Vinci Vegas, will arrive now only by 3:30. He's on site of an inspection right now. That is the information that we've received from his office.